This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, wow, the old monster movies, they are still around, they're still popular, and they're still enticing. And I've got we're going to be celebrating one of the greatest actors in the monster movies, known for the monster movies. We're going to be celebrating Frankenstein, or should I say, the guy who portrayed Frankenstein, the wonderfully talented Boris Karloff. I have his daughter, the lovely Sara Karloff, on the phone with me. How do you do, Sara?
Just fine, and how are you?
I am here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. Have you ever been out this way before?
No, I never have, but I certainly would like to.
Yeah, very few people know where we are. Like, we're an hour ahead of Toronto. So I get people all the time who are like, I thought you were only 3 hours ahead. No, we're 4.
Good grief, you must be in the water.
Oh, we're somewhere. I know where winters aren't fun here, I'll tell you that.
Well, I can imagine. Right now where I am, winters get a lot of snow, too. I'm at Lake Tahoe in Northern California.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's it like there today?
Oh, it's a little overcast, but it's gorgeous. It's always gorgeous. It's in the Sierras, so it's 6,200 feet.
Okay. Well, I can just imagine, I know Bela Lugosi Jr. does this. I know the Cheney family does this. I have not had them on here yet. And I know Victoria Price does this. They go to the conventions. They uphold the memory and of their folks. And you must have a blast going to these, because I know you're at so many of them. I've seen you on on these magazines where they list people at these cons. How much fun is that?
I love going to them, but it's really the fans who hold up our family members' legacy. The fans are just wonderful. They really are.
Here's a question. I ask this of a lot of guests. What's the most interesting thing you've ever been asked to sign?
That's an interesting question. People have tattoos of my father's in makeup. And one time in Connecticut, I was doing an appearance at the Witch's Dungeon in Bristol, Connecticut. And this lady ran up to where I was sitting, and she said, "Oh, you are here. I'm so glad. My son has something to show you." And it was freezing cold out. It was at Halloween, and so she said, "I'll be right back. Don't go away." And I wasn't going to go away. I was there to meet my father's fans. And so she came back in a few minutes with her son, who must have been in his 50s, and he said, "Oh, good." And he pulled off his jacket, and he pulled up his shirt, and he had love handles worse than mine, and he should not be pulling up his shirt in public. And he wanted me to sign on his back where he had a tattoo of my father. And it's the first time I had ever signed a body part.
I hear that a lot,
Oh, I know. And I said, "Well, now, you can never take another shower because this will wash right off." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm going to have it tattooed on." I said, "You're having my signature? You understand, it's not an autograph. My father's was an autograph. Mine is only a signature." He said, "Oh, no, I'm going to cherish it forever. I'm going to immortalize it. I'm going to have it tattooed on tomorrow." I thought, okay.
You know what? You don't have to worry about that with me. I have no tattoos, and quite frankly,
Nor do I.
I don't want any.
I don't either, and I go to these shows and I see so many pierced and painted body parts, and I think, okay, I guess this is culture now. It just wasn't when I was growing up, and so I haven't adopted it for myself. But to each his own. But that's the first time I signed a body part. Since then, I have signed similar body parts by tattoos, and I say the same thing. You can't ever shower again. Oh, no, we're going to have your signature tattooed on us. And I thought, I can't react any differently now than I did the first time.
Well, you know what? I don't, like, at least he had a tattoo of your father and, your signature. He had something he liked. I don't get it when I see people that's got tattoos of spider webs on their elbows or tattoos of barbed wire on their arms. I'm like, I don't get that. It's like, why not get a tattoo of something you like?
Maybe they do.
Okay.
I mean, it is a different culture now, and tattoos are very, very popular, and I would think very painful. So it must be something that is very important to the people who have sleeves of tattoos, and I think it does represent something very special to the people who have them. It just isn't something I have.
Well, to each their own, I guess. I won't criticize them. I'm just not going to get any.
No, nor am I.
So, yeah, I know when I was talking to you to book this interview, you had said you'd never done a convention here in Canada.
No, I've not. And I know there are shows in the Toronto area, and I'd love to visit Canada and do a show honoring, that where I could help perpetuate my father's legacy. I'd love to do a show, but I've not been invited to do one as of yet.
Well, I travel to Toronto every year for Horrorama.
Oh, I'd love to be a guest of that.
I don't know. I think they're all booked this year, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk to Chris Alexander, the guy that's in charge of it, and I'm going to see if we can get you up there. I mean, I don't have any say in it, but I think that would be fantastic to get you up there and, sign autographs and take pictures and stuff, and I think that would be great.
I do a presentation on my father. I show home movies, and some of his interviews, and do a Q&A, and I have a wonderful time meeting my father's fans, and I'd love to do it, especially since my father spent 10 years of the first part of his career in British Columbia.
Yes.
So I'd love to do a show up there. This year, of course, I'm totally booked as all the shows are, but I'd love to do one next year, but people better hurry because I'm getting old.
No, I thought you were only 39.
Yeah, well, I don't even fool myself with that anymore.
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to get on Chris Alexander about that, So I've had a lot of my guests have asked me about Horrorama, and I would love to just say, yes, you're in. Unfortunately, I don't have the last word on that, but I'm going to mention yourself and the fact you do the presentation and whatnot. I think that would be definitely interesting.
Well, I'd love to, especially since my father spent 10 years up there working in British Columbia and Canada. So I'd love to do one.
Okay. Well, I'll see what I can do.
That would be lovely. I'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely, yes. Your father was before my time, but I gotta wonder, what it would be like for him if he was around for these cons.
Oh, he'd say, what's all the fuss about? He really would. He was such a modest man, and had a wonderful sense of humor, and most of which was very self-effacing. And he just would. He'd say, "Don't make such a big fuss. It's no big deal." He said, An actor couldn't fix a sink, and a plumber perhaps could not act. But he just didn't see the difference.
You know what? I appreciate him saying that too, because my pay job, I do maintenance, So, yeah, so I get that. So you must see a lot of the cons, like Bela Lugosi Jr., Victoria Price, the Channies.
I'm good friends with both of them.
Yeah, they must get a thrill out of this too.
Well, they understand that it's such a compliment to our family member, and they appreciate the fans and enjoy meeting the fans, and understand we'd all be home cleaning our own ovens if it weren't for the fans.
Well, you know what? We love to uphold these people, and I've seen Frankenstein up on the big screen. I've seen others of your father's work, but of course he was pretty much famous for Frankenstein, and he was a great movie monster, but and I know he was in Bride of Frankenstein, and there was other Frankenstein movies out there that he was part of.
He only did 3. He only did the first 3. He did Frankenstein, Bride, and Son of Frankenstein, and then he made the decision that, in his opinion, the scripts had gone as far as they could without making the monster the brunt of bad jokes and bad scripts, and he didn't want. He felt that character had made such a pivotal difference in his life, both personally and professionally, that he did not want to take part in degrading the role and the character, and he didn't want to portray it anymore. And he really had a very diverse career. He was fortunate. He made, I think, 167 films. He did a huge body of television work. He had 3 series of his own. He did a huge body of radio. He starred on Broadway in 5 plays, one opposite Julie Harris, for which he was nominated for a Tony. He won a Grammy for How the Grinch Stole Christmas. He played in comedic roles. He got to be a guest star on all the prominent television programs of the day. He embraced the new medium of television in 1949 when it was in its infancy. And so he had a very diverse career and was blessed by the fact he was able to work almost right up until the day he died. And he was fortunate enough to be typecast and for iconic role of Frankenstein and the original Mummy. But he also was blessed for being able to play an enormous variety of roles, a lot in the terror genre, but also in some very dramatic roles, like in The Body Snatcher and Tower of London and the Val Lewton films, and then later on he and Vincent Price and Peter Lorre were able to do a comedy of terrors and The Raven, in which they spoofed their own boogeyman images and had a great time doing so and playing practical jokes on one another on the set, as well as on Roger Corman. And they just didn't take themselves seriously, but they took their work very seriously. And they were the consummate professionals, but they were people who worked with my father respected him as the consummate professional, and people who knew him personally absolutely adored him. One of the biographies written about him was titled Dear Boris, because every time people were interviewed about him who knew him personally, would say, "Oh, dear Boris," and go on with their interview and remarks about him. but he was a lovely, lovely human being. He was well educated in England for the consular service. He was the youngest of 9 children, well educated and articulate, well-read, very funny, had a lovely English sense of humor, and just the antithesis of the roles he played. So he was just a lovely human being.
You say that he did acting in film, stage, radio, and a voice like How the Grinch Stole Christmas and television. Did he have a favorite medium of the bunch?
I don't know. I know that many actors enjoy the instant gratification of live theater. I know the one thing he wished he had an opportunity to do and never did was a stage play in London. Since he was British, that would have been his letter to Santa Claus, but he certainly did everything else but that. So perhaps a legitimate stage was his favorite. I know he started out in a repertory theater in British Columbia, and I know he once said that the highlight of his career was The Lark with Julie Harris. So perhaps the stage was his favorite form of his professional life.
And he was acting back in the silent era too, And
oh yeah, he made many silent films.
What was that like for him to go from the silent films into the sound pictures?
Well, I don't know. I never heard him speak of that, but that's not a pun. But of course, he had a British accent, and the Americans, of course, loved anybody with a British accent. So he had a wonderful speaking voice and a highly recognizable speaking voice. He had 3 wonderful assets, more than 3, but 3 very highly recognizable and wonderful assets in his bag of tricks, so to speak. And one was his voice, another were his eyes, and the third was the use of his hands. His hands were beautiful, and if you remember the scene in Frankenstein where he reaches up to the light, he used his hands beautifully in his career and in his many performances. So his voice, of course, worked in his favor when he transitioned from silent films to speaking films, and that did not work for all silent film actors.
Yeah, I know Chaplin and Keaton struggled with that.
Yes,
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, Karloff, of course, under director James Wales, did Frankenstein. Now, when he did Frankenstein, I know this might sound awkward, but did he have any idea that it would become what it did?
Now, say that again.
Did he have any idea that this role in Frankenstein would launch him the way it did?
Oh, no. Nobody knew that the film would become the iconic film that it did. Nobody expected the creature to be the star of the film. Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive, was anticipated to be the star of the film, not the creature. And my father wasn't even invited to the premiere.
Oh.
So he was just a contract player, and it was to everybody's surprise that my father was the star of the film, and that the film itself was such a tremendous success.
Do you remember anything he said about working with Clive?
My father didn't talk about his work. He didn't bring it home, and he didn't talk about other actors. And no matter how old you may think I am, I wasn't born when that film was made.
Well, I already established you're 39.
Right.
I'm going to stick with that.
Good. Stick with it, please.
That's how I got through school. Didn't matter how bad I was doing. It's told the teacher they looked 39. Passing grade. No, but he did Frankenstein. He did Bride of Frankenstein. One of the interesting things about Bride of Frankenstein is what it does. I mean, you only see the bride towards the end of the movie, but Frankenstein, look at what they do with that character throughout the course of the film, and how they really dive into how he's feeling and how he's trying to function and relate to society.
Indeed, and Bride of Frankenstein is considered to be one of the very best sequels ever made.
Mm-hmm.
It's a wonderful film. It has humor and some very wonderful one-shots in it.
You gotta love that hairdo on the bride.
Oh, yes. And Thesiger is just superb in his role.
Mm-hmm. You know, it reminds me of Young Frankenstein, the moment you see Madeline Kahn come out with that, she's got the hair.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, Young Frankenstein is one of my favorite films.
What do you think your father would have thought of Young Frankenstein? Do you think he would have got a good laugh?
He would have loved it.
Yeah.
He would have loved it, but as I said, my father had a wonderful sense of humor, and of course, any sort of copying or whatever you might want to call it is a form of a compliment.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, Young Frankenstein, I consider one of the greats as well. And Peter Boyle, he played a wonderful creature.
Oh, he did.
I gotta say, I got a big laugh out of the cameo by Gene Hackman, where he's playing the blind man, and because I remember it in Bride of Frankenstein.
He was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Mel Brooks knew how to play humor out of that scene.
Oh, it was just wonderful.
Yeah. But Frankenstein, of course, came out in 1931, which is the same year Dracula came out, and I'm gonna say that was when a lot of the monster movies were really starting to spring. Because of course you mentioned The Mummy, and of course Karloff is in The Mummy as well. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
He plays two roles in that film.
Yes, absolutely. The Mummy, of course, I'm going to assume did he get that because of Frankenstein, or was that just a chance?
No, he got that because Frankenstein made him an overnight success after being in the business 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, I seen The Mummy on the big screen not too long ago. I saw it with double billing with The Wolfman, actually. One Halloween, and it was, because they've made, and I thought it was a good idea, they did the Mummy action films, but I wasn't a big fan of the Mummy action films. They weren't Indiana Jones, but I really enjoyed the 1932 version that your father was in.
Well, that was part of the classic horror films or terror films.
Mm-hmm.
And the later versions were more action films.
Yes. One film I do have to bring up, though, and I saw this in my history of film class way back at the turn of the century here, was the original Scarface, Shame of a Nation, which your father did under Howard Hawks. Mm-hmm. Of course, talk about a film that caused controversy at that time. Talk about that.
It's one I haven't seen.
Oh, you haven't seen Scarface?
No.
Yeah.
It's a terribly poorly kept secret that I don't like scary movies. You must have seen Frankenstein. That was a scary movie. I've seen that a million times.
So Frankenstein's not scary, but Scarface is?
Well, I picked can choose how I'm going to be scared.
You know what? That's the way to go. Yes, he was in Scarface. I remember that, and Bride of Frankenstein. I am trying to find my place here because there was some other films I wanted to bring up. And yeah, he worked with Howard Hawks, and I know he worked with John Ford. And of course, John Ford's won more Academy Awards than any other director. So your father definitely had a lot of respect when he grabbed the attention of these very famous directors.
Yes, he was, and my my father was in Criminal Code with in the play, directed by Hawks, and then he was cast in the film, and that really, it wasn't a large part, but it was a very showy part, and that gave my father quite a break as far as being noticed, and I think it's one of the reasons that he was noticed by James Whale in The Commissary, and after the untimely death of Chaney Sr., and the fact that Bela Lugosi turned down the role of Frankenstein, and they were looking for someone to play that role, that James Whale noticed my father's facial structure in the commissary at Universal after he had been in the film Criminal Code, and he asked him to test for the role.
Yes. You know, one thing I really hate is how the media tries to create controversy, and I mentioned this to you before when I booked you about the Ed Wood movie, you know, and Bela Lugosi as Jr. said wonderful things about you, and said that his father would never have said those things, you know, and but they tried to create this clash between Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. I find that so insane, you know, to sell papers.
Well, it sold tickets.
Yeah. But
tickets. You know, I mean, Bela was Hungarian and had his own personal interests when he wasn't working.
Yeah.
That he pursued, and my father was British and had his own personal interests, which he pursued when he wasn't working. But the two of them made some very fine films together.
Yes, they did.
Worked together very harmoniously.
Yep.
And I had a great professional respect for one another.
Yes. Yep.
And today it's just like then. It's not uncommon at all for actors who don't socialize together, other than during a film, or even during the making of a film, to see each other unless they're cast together on another film. That's not unusual.
Nope. Well, I'll tell you one thing I always find amusing. We got Abbott and Costello, Meet the Killer, Boris Karloff, and you know, Abbott and Costello has done a number of great comedies. You know, they were wonderful together. Boris Karloff must have enjoyed working with them.
Well, as I say, he never brought his work home, and he never talked about the films he was making nor the actors he was working with. He simply didn't bring his work home.
Well, I think it's certainly interesting. I know Costello was before my time. But nonetheless...
I know his daughter, Chris Costello.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She's a friend of mine.
Oh, you know what? I should reach out at some point. But, no, I was going to say, too, that here's something I think you can bring up is I like to have people promote and plug charities. Did your father have anything that was dear to him that he supported?
Oh, he was one of the founding members of the Screen Actors Guild. His card number was number 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very important to him because he and the other 11 founding members felt it was extremely important to form the guild, which the purpose of which was to give up-and-coming actors a voice in their profession to speak out about the working conditions and to help improve the working conditions of up-and-coming actors. My father, for instance, worked sometimes 19, 20 hours a day on some of the early films he made. He lost 25 pounds during the making of Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
And he was already a starving actor. It took 4 hours to put the Frankenstein makeup on and 3.5 to 4 hours to take it off. That's already an 8-hour working day right there. And then the shooting day would begin. And when he made the Mummy, that took the Imhotep makeup took almost as long to put on, and then he had a 19-hour working day, and at the end of the shooting day for Imhotep, he passed out on the set because the gauze bandages had absorbed all his body fluids.
Oh.
The working conditions for actors during those times who had no... my father was just, when he made Frankenstein, he was just a contract player with absolutely no rights whatsoever and no protection for working conditions. They were appalling working conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And long hours. And the makeup for Frankenstein was lead-based. And, so these founding members of SAG were forming a union in opposition to the studio bosses and the directors who worked these men inhumanly.
Yes.
And inhumanely. And but they were putting their careers on the line forming SAG. And I remember my mother saying that couples would attend a party and on the dance floor, and they would dance by one another and whisper, "Meeting Tuesday night at so-and-so's house," and dance right on by. It was very dangerous to they could have never worked again, and been blackballed totally for forming a union such as SAG. And my father worked on the board of SAG for years and years, and it was something he never talked about, but he was very pleased and very proud to have been a forming member of it. He felt it was very, very important. So I know he's very pleased to have been associated with that. I know he supported the Actors' Home and felt that was very fortunate, very important, because it provided a home for actors who had fallen on hard times and provided them a place to go in their declining years.
Mm-hmm.
So he had many things that were important to him that he simply never talked about.
Yes.
He was very modest, very private, and very generous.
Yes. Did you ever see him, I know you go to the cons and you meet the fans. Do you ever see him have interactions with fans?
Yes. And he was very, very gracious.
Mm-hmm.
Very gracious. Riding on an elevator with my father was always very interesting.
Yeah.
Because the other occupants of the elevator didn't know whether or not to take advantage of the captive situation or not, but there was a lot of body language going on in the elevator, nudging. That's Boris Karloff. That's Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And very often they would treat him with always they would treat him with great respect, and he was very gracious in acknowledging their recognition and the nice things they would say to him. And at a restaurant, sometimes people would come up and speak to him and ask for his autograph, and he was always gracious. But he was a very gracious human being.
Yes. I think that is awesome. I just wonder, what charities are you involved in? Give yourself a plug here.
No, I never give myself a plug in an interview.
Okay. Well, I like to open up charity work, if anybody's listening. But I do know that you have a web page for
Yes,
your
I
father. Do. Plug that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. It's www.karloff.com.
Yeah.
We made it simple so I'd remember it.
So you could remember it.
Yeah, and I have an email if people want to send me emails and ask me questions. It's karloff@karloff.com.
Yes. I couldn't imagine you're one of 9 siblings. I thought my parents were in large families, but you're in a larger one.
Well, my father was one of 9. I'm an only child.
Oh, you're an only child. He was one of
an only-
9. Okay.
No, my father was one of 9. But I was born on my father's 52nd birthday, and I think I was the most expensive birthday present he ever got.
Probably the best one he ever got.
Well, I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. Well, what's coming up in the future? You get cons. Is there anything else coming up for you?
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty well booked. I'm going to Clark, New Jersey on the 26th of this month, to a show on the 28th of this month in Clark, New Jersey. In October, I'm going to, that's not open to the public, let's see. I'm going to Chiller Theater in Parsippany, New Jersey, which is absolutely open to the public, and that's the 25th, 26th, and 27th at the Hilton in Parsippany, New Jersey. I'm speaking at the Los Angeles Natural History Museum in L.A., along with Joe Dante and another panel member from, I think it's 7 to 8:30 in the evening. And let's see, that's on the Sunday the 20th of October.
Okay.
Oh, there's my cell phone again.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap up here soon anyway, but...
Okay, and let's see, in November, I'm going to... Oh, goodness, my calendar's a mess. In November, I'm going to the Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm going to the Grand Rapids Comic-Con, which is the 8th, 9th, and 10th of November in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay. Do you have a favorite of your father's films?
Yes, I do.
Targets? That was one of his last ones.
Yes, it was, and it was written by and directed by and acted in by Peter Bogdanovich.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful film about an aging horror screen star. And a brilliant casting, my father in it. And it is about a sniper, and unfortunately it's as and shooting at random, and it's as timely today as when it was first released. And when it was first released, unfortunately, it was at the time of the Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassination, so it was pulled from the theaters. But it is now available on DVD. It's and it expressed my father's real feelings and mine too, that the real horror is on the street and not up on the screen. It's an excellent film. timeless in its application, unfortunately. But it's an excellent film.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you know what? I enjoyed having you come on here today and allow me the honor to interview you and also honor your father.
Thank you very much. Well, the honor goes to my father, and the appreciation goes to his legion of fans who have helped perpetuate his legacy and who are always gracious to me.
Well, you know what? I'm going to see what I can do about getting you up here for Toronto. I'll have a talk and see if we can get you at Horrorama. I think that would be a treasure to get you there. And
well, I'd love nothing better. I'd like to visit where my father's early career began.
Yes, absolutely. Before I let you go, would you mind very much doing a plug for my show?
I wouldn't mind at all.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, this is Sara Karloff, and we've been paying a tribute to my father, Boris Karloff, on the Greg Gilbert Show on Python Paradise out of New Brunswick, Canada.
What do you think of all the merchandise out there on your father? Like, you see a lot of the Frankenstein figurines, and you can't help but think of him when you see these.
Well, the first time I realized that any of this went on, I was doing my very first guest appearance over 20 years ago with Bela Lugosi and Dwight Fry Jr. and Ron Chaney. We were all guests of Famous Monsters of Filmland's first show back in Crystal City, Maryland. And we were like the children of the night. It's the first time we'd ever made an appearance like that. And the fans were all over us, and we loved our 15 minutes of fame. And we had the best time. They couldn't have been nicer to us. And somebody came up to me and asked me if I'd been down to the dealer's room. And I thought they meant they were playing poker.
Okay.
I had no idea what they were talking about. I said, no, I'd love to go because I love to play poker. So they took me down there, and there were over 100 merchandise dealers down there. I was disappointed until I was taken by the hand and walked around. All these dealers were down there, and they were selling pictures of me and my father and my husband on our honeymoon when we visited my father on the set of Comedy of Terrors.
Okay.
And, no, it wasn't that set. It was Frankenstein 1970.
Okay.
That set. And other pictures of me visiting my father at the Chateau Marmont. And I thought, where did they get these pictures? That was taken with my Brownie camera. And they were selling all these rings and T-shirts and things of my father, and I thought, what is this? I never knew this whole fandom existed, and I knew my father hadn't known about it, and I was just stunned.
Okay.
All these dealers. Now I are one. It's just amazing. But I honestly thought when they said dealer's room, that they were playing poker. So that's how I learned about all this. And now, some 20 years later, I am fortunate enough to know a lot of these dealers, and I am fortunate enough to know a lot of the fans, and I have had the most glorious 20-some years learning from the fans things about my father's career I would never have known before, because the fans are far more knowledgeable about my father's career than I ever could have been without their help.
Well, you know what? We would love to have you here in Canada, and I'm going to see what I can do about that. And I'll certainly keep you up to date on when this interview will be posted.
Okay, I would appreciate both. Thank you, and I've had a marvelous time talking with you. Thank you so much.
No problem. God bless you, and you have a wonderful day there in California.
I shall. I'm looking out at Lake Tahoe, and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Absolutely. Well, you have a wonderful day, and God bless.
Thank thank you so much for having me as your guest.
No problem. The honor was all mine.
Oh, no, it was mine, too. Thank you.
You're welcome. You take care.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.